So what do you know about design? No, honestly, it's a legit question. You see, in my line of work, I noticed that most people, including professional designers as myself, don't really understand what design is, nor the impact it can make. So to give you a bit of an insight, I thought I could tell you a story. A brief story about the origins of design and why it matters. Now, our story starts in England in the 18th century on the verge of the first industrial revolution. And our story has a protagonist, Josiah Wedgwood. Born in Burslem in 1730, Josiah was the son of a pottery maker and soon followed his father's career. And by 1759, he had already started his own production. Now, Josiah had some peculiarities about him. First, he was a survivor of a smallpox infection that rendered him unable to operate the pedal of a pottery wheel. He was highly interested in technological advances of the time, especially the ones that could help him on his craft. And he was also a very passionate entrepreneur. And as such, he would always ask himself the same fundamental question: how can I make more money? See, at the time, the general rule of business was very straightforward. You produced, you stored, you sold. And Josiah started pretty much the same way, except that it soon proved very inefficient for him. That's when he had the idea that would change the industry forever: sales by catalog. Instead of focusing on his production, he would assemble showrooms with examples of his wares. He would also send door-to-door salesmen to showcase his products to potential customers. This way, Wedgwood's factory would only produce what his customers had already ordered, almost entirely removing the storage process out of the equation. And the thing is, it worked. He had a very successful business model, extremely revolutionary for the time, except that it created a huge technical problem. At the time, the manufacturing processes were not that precise, and you'd have lots of inconsistencies between products. And if your clients order from a showcase collection, not having a high standard becomes a very big issue. In the early 1760s, Wedgwood's production was largely based on a green ceramics, which had two very problematic manufacturing steps: the application of the glaze to the pots and the burning process that would happen inside large furnaces. You see, the glaze was applied by hand, which would always generate inconsistencies no matter how skilled of an artisan he had. Adding to that, the furnaces burned at very high and often uneven temperatures that would cause the glaze to crack and its color to fade. The solution? Well, Wedgwood solved the furnace issue by applying colorless glaze and then painting it with enamel. Since the enamel demanded lower temperatures to burn, it had less of a risk of cracking or of its color fading. He also started applying the enamel by decals. It was like applying a contact tattoo to the surface of the vase, making the process more consistent and more efficient. But he was still not satisfied with his control over the outcome. So he started to think of ways to improve his production line. Yes, production line. At the time, the division of work was nothing new, and pottery factories already had at least 7 different stages. What Wedgwood did was to divide and recombine some of the stages to his own factory. He then hired supervisors to assure quality at each stage of production and started commissioning artists to create the prototypes for his wares. These artists would bring in the latest style trends to his productions, allowing him to deliver exactly what his customers were looking for. And I know what you're thinking. Those artists were definitely the first designers. And you're wrong. Actually, most of the design work was performed by Wedgwood himself. You see, adapting the product to fit in different business models and improving on its manufacturing process was the real design achievement here. Design is so much more than style and customer experience. It is a tool to converge new technologies, business strategies, and customer expectations into one successful product or service. So if you are a designer, understanding the whole life cycle of your product and how it can be improved should definitely be on the top of your priority list. And if you own a business, well, maybe you can think of implementing design as a core part of your strategy. This video was based on the book by Adrian Forty, Objects of Desire. I really do recommend the read, especially if you want to learn more about the history of industrial design. And if you want to learn more about Josiah Wedgwood, his business is still up and running, and you should definitely check his website. There's a ton of useful information in there. And at last, this concludes the story of how an industrialist invented industrial design. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.